So yeah, let's go with Brian. Pronouns are he, him, calling in from Canada, asking what kind of evidence would make us believe. Brian, can you hear us? And are you okay? How are you?
I can. I'm good, thanks. How are you
Awesome.
guys?
Perfect. I'm
Doing
awesome,
okay.
man. Thanks so much for asking. So do you want to elaborate a little bit on, like, did you have like a lead up to that, or are you just asking generally, like, what would stop us from being atheists?
Oh, sure. So one of the more important arguments against the existence of God is the issue of evidence. That
Mhm.
atheists believe there's no clear evidence for the existence of God, and evidence is important. So my question is, if there was, what kind of evidence would convince you or anyone to become a believer? What kind of evidence are you talking about?
Jmike, do you want
Novel.
to go first?
Examples?
Yeah, novel predictions, preferably testable. If we're gonna put this in like an empirical domain, then it'd be great to have some type of novel predictions or future predictions we don't know of, generate some expectation.
Yeah.
But in the general scheme of things, especially when I talk to theists in the philosophical realm, they generally offer what are called like a priori arguments, or just like deductive arguments. And I'd be okay with that if someone could offer me one. I just don't think that they ultimately work. And then the third would be on a worldview comparison, that if we can just compare, say, naturalism to theism, and look at like the explanatory breadth and depth versus its simplicity, its unification of what it posits in its theory, and then not adding like foreign, you know, ontology or things like spirits and jinns and genies to our worldview if they don't serve any explanatory role. So those would be like kind of the three things that I'd be looking for.
Yeah, I would say it'd be
Okay.
similar. It's just that I stand by the idea that, like, if I were to go back to a couple 100,000 years ago and show some very early human my cell phone, they would probably think that I was a god. This is the most amazing, miraculous thing they've ever seen. So, like, I don't know of a way that I could distinguish, even if I had really solid, good evidence of something unbelievable and incredible and otherworldly. I couldn't say for sure that it wasn't some time traveler. I couldn't say for sure it wasn't aliens. I couldn't say for sure it wasn't, some other supernatural being. And maybe if a genie or if a fairy or if something like that exists and then they do some things, maybe I would think that was what So I can say the easy answer I would give is like actual positive evidence of something that is just completely beyond the realm of science, and also cannot be within the realm of science, because we discover things that are outside the realm of science all the time. That's what makes new science. That's how quantum mechanics came about. We were like, oh, we need new math for this, it turns out. But I don't know for sure what I could see that would definitively be, okay, this can only possibly be a god, let alone the God of the Bible. However, as other atheist hosts of the show have pointed out, if there is a God, that dude knows for sure what exactly it would take to convince me and every other atheist. They can apparently read our minds and see our hearts and all these other weird things. So he knows what can convince me. He knows exactly what to do to make me completely change my mind. And so far has chosen not to do it.
Yeah, that one's really strange, because theists will say that's already been presented to you, and then if you go, well, you believe God's omniscient, right? Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, then so he knows prior to him even like sending the signal that it's not going to work, but he
Right.
sends it
Right.
anyway. So like my conclusion is that's an irrational being that you believe in, right? That's like
It's
the
like Doctor
definition of
Strange
being
checking out all the
irrational.
ways to beat Thanos. Like, it's
Yeah,
just
it's like
like
you
he
already
knows
know
it.
I'm gonna walk past it, not even probably see it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like
Yeah.
that to me, I think that is something that's going to compact an issue if you imbue these types of properties to the deity, right? Once you
Yep.
imbue those properties, then yeah, I mean, it doesn't seem like the ball is in the theist court, the atheist court. But one thing I want to say, I'm sorry, Brian, something I remembered. I'm open to any other like new methodology or mechanism of truth that we just can't conceive of at the moment. Like, I'll leave it up there as a possibility. The way I see this is that me and Forrest are building houses with a hammer, and someone's trying to tell us that, well, there could be another hammer that you could, or another tool you could use. And when I asked them, like, take me to Home Depot and like, let's go buy it, like they couldn't even show me the aisle it's in, or like what materials it's made out of, or like I can't get anything substantive to take it seriously. And then when me and Forrest continue to build our, our buildings and our skyscrapers through this method of science, right? I look over at the other person's lot who's like claiming that they have another way to build all this or to come to knowledge. And I see like their lot's empty and they're kicking rocks and they just believe it. Like they just believe it will happen, but I don't see anything as substance. And it gets really annoying because it seems like those people stand on top of our skyscrapers that we build and shout from the rooftops of them about how we're mistaken. And so it becomes very strange to me because it's like, just take me to Lowe's, right? Like I want to see what the tool is, but nobody ever offers it. So I just go, yeah, I'm not going to believe in that until you can give me a reason to.
Yeah, there's no question that it is very strange. I agree with you all. And both of you said a bunch of things. It's hard to know where to start. I heard Forrest say that you're not even sure you could be convinced of any evidence. There may be a possibility for that. There may be no way of knowing.
Well, it's just that I don't know what evidence would be sufficient for something like that, because I don't know. Like, if you showed me something that's definitely wow, amazing, miraculous, how do I know that's not some alien civilization that's come here? You know what I mean? Like, it's how do I know what a god looks like? How do I know what it's so much there?
But doesn't that take the issue of God off the table then? If there can be no, because one of the arguments against God is that you believe, or atheists believe, there's no evidence. But if you're saying, really, I can't trust that there's any evidence anyways, you can't make an argument about evidence. You can't use it as an argument.
That's a really good way. That's a totally understandable way to take what I just said. So let me be a little bit more clear. I'm not saying that evidence doesn't matter, and I'm not saying that there is no good evidence. I'm saying that, even like I can for sure be convinced that there's amazing, wonderful, crazy things out there beyond my comprehension. If you show me like any evidence at all for that, absolutely. The question is, when then do you draw the line between this crazy thing or that crazy thing? So how do you know that it's, the last card we're talking about, Roland the Closet Goblin? How do you know it's the God of the Bible and not Roland the Closet Goblin, who can also do this great, you know what I mean? So I'm not saying that I wouldn't be convinced in anything supernatural or anything extraordinary or whatever. I'm just saying that I don't have the comparative way to decipher what that evidence actually means. However, God does. If God exists, God knows exactly what thing to do to make me believe exactly what I need to believe. And that is what's being withheld from us. So like, I'm not saying that I wouldn't believe even in the face of evidence. I'm saying that like, I don't even know what good evidence would look like because it's such a specific, crazy claim. Does that make sense?
That definitely, I like that a lot. But one of you, cool. Both of you, I also said there may be some things that could convince you. I think one of the things said was some evidence about something in the future, some prediction that comes in about the future that comes true.
Yeah, predictive expectation.
Sure.
Right. So there's two parts of that. First is, who makes that prediction? Where does that prediction come from? Does it materialize? You obviously an apparition standing in front of you saying, I'm God, and this is what's going to happen next Tuesday.
I don't know. It's not my problem. That's the problem if he takes on that. Whoever wants to take that thesis on, that's going to be their work ahead of them. And if they can do it, that's great. But I think that highlights a really big issue that this, if what we do exist in, say, metaphysical naturalism is true, well, then we're not going to find anything, right? We're only going to have this domain. All the type of arguments for like Platonism or whatever types of views we could just pretty much be rest assured that those don't, there's some language game going on or something that's not really tracking something in the world. I'm just saying hypothetically, because it seems like to me, like that's fine. If it's not the case, I can concede I don't see a contradiction, right? I can't like give you a logical contradiction until you give me properties of the God. Then I can spell that out. But the general idea, someone's going to have to do the work. They're going to have to assess what the properties are, right? They're not starting on like this blank sheet. They're going to have to like really work hard towards this. And like Forrest says, I don't even really know what that would look like, but I'm trying to be open to that type of endeavor if in fact it could exist. I'm very skeptical that it could. I really am. I'm more inclined to think that it's not going to happen and that there aren't going to be deductive arguments that are successful. But I've changed my mind. I've committed myself to positions that I never thought I would. And that just all it took was presenting arguments or evidence. And I was glad to take them because I have a more defensible position. And that's going to be huge. If this is really true, and I can look at that and I know I can defend that position because of how obviously true through whatever mechanism, then I would be just ecstatic to take it on because I have a more defensible position than I had prior. But it's not my job to like do that when I don't accept those claims to begin with, right? I would be like in this endless endeavor of having to prove all these other claims, and that's not how like it works, right? So I'd rather just assess the claims as they come to me.
The idea of evidence is not a simple notion. It's not a simple idea, because I think most of us look at it simplistically. Like all of a sudden, if some apparition appeared in front of us and said, right now I'm going to cure world hunger, and world hunger gets cured, then most of us would be pretty convinced that that was something pretty significant. Now, it might be an alien being, of course, but it might be some people might call it a higher power. The word God is, we don't know what that really means, that word is. Some higher power, some incredible force did that, and that's pretty incredible. Most of us would believe in that higher force, whatever
Not
it is,
one
even if it is
time.
an alien being.
Not one time. We would all like if God wrote like
No,
think of
maybe
the
a number of
Humean
times.
type of we write all writes the star, or God whispers into everybody's ear with a language that they can understand, or writes
Right.
in the sky.
Yes. Right.
What we
Something
would
pretty
do, what we
amazing
would
like
do
that.
is we would go, at least what I would do is I need to go get an fMRI, right? That's the first thing, because I know that things like this are psychologically explained. Then I can confer with other people. Did you see this? Did you see that? We really wouldn't know what to think yet, but we might have some basis to go off of to maybe investigate it in some way, hopefully. And if we can't, then like all that stuff, like I don't really know how we just attribute it to something when all it takes for that phenomena to occur is something that can alter the perceptions of agents. I mean, that to me seems to be, could be naturalistically explained. It could be explained by aliens. It could be explained by all sorts of stuff. But guess what? We don't find ourselves in that world. We don't find ourselves in the world where the stars are being rearranged, and we don't have a history of that. And so when I talk about credence that I put, I just don't know why. Like if I gave you a bunch of marbles, and they're blue marbles and pink marbles, and I say they're mixed up, and you only pull blue marbles, and you just pull blue marbles forever and ever and ever and ever, and then you go, well, what would make you convinced that the next one's going to be red or something? I'd be like, well, I don't have any reason. I have actually really good background data to suggest that it's not going to be red, and so I'm going to take my proportion of what I think and lean it towards that side, because the thing that's being expressed hasn't even come out of the bag or anything to indicate that it ever will come out of the bag. So that's, for me, it's hard for me because I don't know. Some people are more willing to accept those things. I want to see the red thing pulled out of the bag, or some reason that I think, like I have good reason that the next thing is going to pop out will be red and not blue.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's with running on that example just a little bit further is, it's entirely possible that there is just a complete statistical anomaly here, and that there's so many more red things than blue things in the bag, and that it's just incredible that you've only pulled blue thing. Who knows how that happened? There is a 1 in 10 bazillion chance. But that doesn't change the fact that that's all the data that we have. It's entirely possible that there is some God doing all these things in all the way, but we haven't detected anything like that, and we have no reason to think that any of the detections that we do have are attributed to that. So we have to run with the data that we have. Maybe it's completely crazy statistical unlikelihood that this is the way that it is, but it is the way that it is, and it's what we have to roll with. And I like the term, you've heard, I'm sure, of Occam's razor. If you hear hoofbeats outside, you need to think horses first, not there's a herd of zebras and giraffes. It's a horse hoofbeat, right? And so that's way more of a if you look outside and there are zebras and giraffes, wow, amazing, fantastic. But until you see that, there's no reason to assume that that's what it's going to be, and that's the same thing we feel with this God. Is it possible? Sure. Is there maybe some evidence out there we're not noticing? Sure. But until we see that, there's no reason to say that's true any more than there is any other crazy, spiritual, supernatural, ridiculous fairy tale claim. I don't believe in the Easter Bunny for the exact same reason. It's not to make a mockery of it. It's just the exact same line of thinking.
One of the arguments that theists might offer is that the evidence, quote unquote, is in the reality itself, the universe, the beauty of nature, the incredible, I have to admit, the incredible things that have come out of religion, incredible art and literature. It changed the phenomenon of each religion, changed society in dramatic ways. So people would say that's evidence, because if we had more concrete evidence that simple humans like me would love to have, if we really did have concrete, simple evidence, then none of us, we would just what would we have to live for? Because
it's
we have it, now we know
underdetermined.
for sure there's a God, and we
But
know for
Brian,
sure there's this God. He's just going to take care of us. I'm not going to do much.
the
So
problem though is that
on
all
one
that's
hand,
under
we've got this incredible stuff that's come out of religion. The other is, if we had real convincing evidence, give up.
I don't see why that matters. It's just underdetermined. Like, so it's just going to be the evidence there will be underdetermined by good things that come out of completely secular sources that shape society or whatever it might be. I'm not really seeing like why that, like, because all that's going to be asked, I think, in that framework is what's the inference from going from like this thing helps society to it being true, right? That's the inference that would need to follow. Because that, if they're saying it's evidence or something like that, then we could test that in some way, presumably if they mean by evidence. But if they mean like, oh no, there's just this like logical entailment that, you know, if this thing occurs, then it's best explained by a deity. I am not seeing how they could ever make such an inference like that, right? Because it just seems that I could infer the opposite and underdetermine it really quickly.
Because we can't have concrete evidence of a deity. So religious believers say, this is my belief. This is what so again, it comes down to faith, and I'm not going to get into those arguments of faith. I know the problem with faith, and we can just, I know where you often say we can stop the argument here, and I'm not going to go into that. But religious people would say, given that simple evidence it's impossible. And I see these things, and these things that have come out of religion convince me that it's a good thing. The more religious a community is, the tighter knit that community is. The incredible things they do for each other, support and love and caring all around the world. You can say you're a Catholic, you can walk into some place in some foreign country and go into some church and you're going to be accepted. Remarkable things happen in the name of religion. And
so a couple of things there. Number one, also, like, just we got to move on. We got to move on to the next caller, but I really want to ask you about that. And then one more thing you said, just very quickly, as quickly as I can. Yes, some remarkable things come out of religion, including things like community. Also, some horrible, hideous things come out of religion. So if we have to take credit for one, you have to take credit for the other. And also, there's a significant amount of evidence that shows that the less religious a country is, the higher like human rights are, and like the more overall happiness in the population, and like equality and social structure like that. A lot of things go up when religion goes down. So if you want to point to community, sure, you can point to community. I'll point to the Spanish Inquisition, and we'll see which one of us is more compelling. But like, so that's the one thing. And then the other thing that I have, and if you want, you can address that first, and then I'll move on to the other thing. Because the other thing is going to be the final question that I have for you.
Oh, like, that's a big, long discussion. I mean, I hear you completely. Ridiculous and horrible things have come out of religion too. And of course, people would argue that's not what the founder said, and they're not following what their founder said.
Right, it's a no true Scotsman thing. So like, but that, and so that really, it brings me to my last thing though. That just really quickly, like, you've said a lot of stuff here that we've heard, you know, a million times before, about like the utility of religion, and about different things that you can see that are like benefits, and like ways that it makes people feel this and that and the other, and we don't really have evidence, and we, you know, faith is this and that. Like, my whole question is, would you apply this exact same line of thinking to absolutely anything else ever? Would you ever say there can't be concrete evidence for, pick your favorite, gravity? There can't be. It's just a thing. And look at how good civilizations that believe in gravity are, and therefore we're just going to roll with it. Like, any of the things that you presented today, the entire call, you've been on for 18 minutes. This entire call, is there a single one of the things you said today that you would apply to any other thing ever?
I would have to think about that.
That's a problem. That's my issue.
Reality, and gravity will be. Actually, we found out there is a basis to gravity. I'm not sure that's a good example. I need to think.
Right, but that's what I'm saying.
We found that out independently too, right?
Yeah, we didn't find that out through faith. We found that out through experimentation. So, like, you know, we pick, you know, you take gravity, you say the speed of light, say vaccines, say, you know, the other planets existing, say what, anything, not even just like scientific stuff. The fact that my toaster is in my kitchen right now, do I believe that based on faith, or have I gone in there and used it in the past? You know what I mean? So, like, this. Just anything else at all in your life, would you ever use the same kind of thinking that you're using for this religion? And I think even if you have to think about that for a second, that's a problem.
Probably not.
Yeah. So that's the whole thing. It's like it's understandable to say there's special evidence. There are certain things in the universe that require special kinds of evidence, special kind of thinking, sure. But there's never a time in my life where I'm going to have a different set of rules for something than I do for everything else. You know what I mean? It just doesn't really work that way for me.
No, of course not. It shouldn't. It shouldn't.
No.
Okay.
So anyway, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us, Brian. You've been a fantastic caller.
Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. Take care, man.
Okay, I hate the beauty, but they look at the beauty thing and all that. I'm like, I mean, yeah, it's easy to select that, and I'd tell you to go walk down like a children's hospital or something, right?
Yeah.
Like, where you're gonna really, really feel some way. That's not like, look at the trees, how great they are, right? You're gonna see something that, in my opinion, you're like avoiding to see, right? Because it just drives nothing. Not against Brian. Yeah. It's just the general conversation when people bring that up. It's one of those things where I'm just like, oh my gosh.
It bugs me too. It bugs me too.